You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Its purpose is to dissect and discuss classic horror films of the old, but also to talk about the new as well. In this instance, we were going to continue one of our franchise discussions of The Evil Dead. The last time round, we did a double whammy podcast on the first two installments, which was Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. It's logical now that we're going to talk about the third installment to round out what was the trilogy, Army of Darkness, again starring Bruce Campbell. I should introduce you to myself first up and foremost. I am the lead host of the Surgeons of Horror podcast, Paul Farrell. Joining me, as always, with the Evil Dead franchise discussions is none other than Miles Davies. Hey, Miles.
Hey.
How's it going, buddy?
Good. I'm very good.
That's cool. Well, like as I said, look, we had not long ago talked about the first two installments, and the reason why we kind of combined those two is because they do kind of walk a bit hand in hand. So it's slightly remake, slightly a sequel as well. A lot of elements were used. It was basically Evil Dead with a bigger budget, and they were able to push things in new directions. And a big way was the physical kind of CGI, not CGI, non-CGI creature effects that were involved within it. What was interesting about the way the last one ended, and this is where Army of Darkness picks up, is that we're suddenly transported to the medieval ages. So we're kind of really thrown out of our original time frame or timeline, which was a bit off the wall and off the cuff. And so with the announcement of Army of Darkness when it was first came out, which I should add was another 6 years after the fact that Evil Dead 2 came out. Yeah,
do you think they actually knew that they were going to do like a last one, or they're just posing this sort of nonsensical?
My gut is, I mean, it's hard to say this within hindsight, but my gut is that the short answer to that is no. I think they wanted to kind of have this very daunting world that Ash would find himself in, and the evil is kind of eternal.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of whole thing of just because he's vanquished it in our current timeline doesn't mean that it's going to be complete. And then we will touch on the Ash versus Evil Dead series at some point down the track with our podcast discussions. We're not going to have time for that today, but it is interesting that that was it 30 years after the fact, and we're picking up again with his journey. So it does kind of feel like as I said, evil is eternal, and so like I feel like they just wanted, they needed to end it somehow, and it was going to go one of two ways. He was either going to get sucked into the dark world, never to return, or let's just dump in somewhere completely random where evil is reigning supreme once again. I don't know, how did you strike with that? To throw the question back at you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at the time I didn't think about it, but I just thought it was a nice twist.
Yes,
that was the same as skipping forward to the ending of Army of Darkness. It's kind of, there's a couple of different endings, obviously, and the kind of this almost, especially the future one where he ends up in the future. It just throws it out there of it doesn't really need to go anywhere. It's just to the Ash's story because they just keep fucking with him basically.
Any excuse to
situations. So this is just another situation they've just chucked him into.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, here we go, and your imagination goes wild.
It does, huh? That's the thing. It just, I remember off the back of watching Evil Dead 2, just going, holy shit, like it just opens up. It's like Pandora's box suddenly just got opened up, So it was, it was a really interesting kind of take.
And I thought it was really interesting the fact that they didn't do it till years later. And I remember when it came out, it just came out so stealthily as well. Like, I mean, it was pre-internet, obviously, easily if they'd had the internet back then, you would have heard nothing. What's it called? Harry Knowles' site, Ain't It Cool News, would have been.
Yeah.
wall to wall with it for about a year beforehand. So
yeah,
you would have been completely oversaturated by the time it even came out.
of course, yeah. And so, but what do you think also of the dropping of the Evil Dead from the title as well? Because it's the first thing. Yeah,
I mean, it suddenly turned into Ash versus the Army of Darkness, basically.
Yeah.
And it became his story. So each story was a further adventure of Ash.
Yeah.
Just put another twist, put another individual sort of stamp on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the good thing about all three of those films is they stand alone. You don't need to have seen all of them to appreciate them in their own right.
Yeah.
Recap at the beginning of Army of Darkness anyway. And we've
that's true, yeah.
as Linda, so
because
she apparently begged to be in the movie because I think she was doing a simple plan.
Ah, okay, yeah. So Sam Raimi tie-in, yeah, cool. Yeah.
Goes, oh, you're doing Army of Darkness. Oh, I love that those films. Can I be in it? And yeah, right. That's how she ended up in it.
Right, cool.
But she was great, you know.
Yeah.
The fact that they keep changing the bloody actors. Just is.
It becomes a moot point, really, in the end, isn't it?
Yeah. They don't pretend that they're making high art or.
No, not at all.
You know, the audiences are pretty forgiving with any continuity errors or anything. But you know, I mean, I was glad they continued the story, but they could have quite easily ended it at Evil Dead Part 2. One
thing I can't remember if we touched on was the Sam Raimi cameo from the second one at the end.
Oh, was he one of the knights?
Yeah, right. He's the one that kind of basically takes the helmet off at the end.
Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned it, but I just thought we should probably mention that and probably move on that just as swiftly.
He's not in the Darkness because they completely reenact that scene almost.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it becomes a very kind of different beginning again, as it were, which has become kind of a bit of a, as you said, is a bit of a staple with the franchise. You know, they're not afraid to kind of rewrite things and you know, and rehash it a little bit. So yes, as I was saying, so the film essentially, you could look at it and split it into three parts quite easily. The first part is where, you know, Ash finds himself kind of surrounded by these kind of knights figures, and he's basically captured by who is essentially Lord Arthur and his men and taken back, and they mistake him for I guess working with the other group of knights that they're fighting against. And you know, and this is where he meets he kind of semi meets Enda Davids' character Sheila, thank you. For the first time, and she kind of thinks he's the one that's killed her brother, is it, or husband anyway?
I think it was
brother, was it? Yeah. So she automatically kind of hates him, which, you know, is a bit of an ongoing trait with Ash. He's not instantly likable when people meet him.
What does he say? First you hate me, and now you want to kiss me.
Yeah, that's it. But what I love about the opening bit is, like, you know, he essentially gets thrown into this pit, where he faces one of these deadites, and it's a real bloody gruesome kind of you know, gory kind of sequence, and if anyone thought they were going to shy away of the direction they were going with their second one, they were sorely mistaken. It's an also, I love that bit. What was your thoughts of that
so
sequence?
over the top as well. They got away. Yeah. It's not. It turns into. It goes beyond gruesome into comedy.
It does. It does.
I mean, you just look at the jet powered sort of blood spraying out of that pit.
Yes.
Just so completely and utterly over the top.
Yeah.
You know, and the red on the blood is just so pink. I can't remember what the rating was. It was PG, so they're able to get like a lower rating on it.
Yeah.
And it's always become the, you know, as gruesome as it actually is, it's the most family friendly version of the Evil Dead.
Yeah,
it doesn't have the scares in there either. It's just a guy fighting a zombie.
Yeah.
rather
Do you think that is because of the comedy? The comedy element is really retched up in this one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think they've gone horror with a slight comic edge, a tongue-in-cheek comic edge, to comedy horror to complete fucking comedy.
Yeah.
Horror edge.
Yeah. Definitely. The even the I mean, they already were using stop animation, but like there's more of it in this one too, and I think that kind of lends itself to this, imaginary kind of creative world a lot more. I don't want to say it wasn't realistic, because there is quite realistic, but and the slapstick element is retched up as well, which obviously is a nod to the Three Stooges, which Sam Raimi was a huge fan of. So yeah, I think all these elements that were at play kind of really heighten that for me in this film. So yeah, I mean, he becomes his character becomes a lot camper within it too.
It's a lot more caricatured. I think it's and it's definitely a throwback to is it Mark Twain, the Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court?
Yeah,
it's really it's like a full horror version of that, basically.
And even the so it kind of cut. Actually, that's a good segue into what is the second, like the middle act. Essentially, is like where Ash is kind of told by this wise man that he's the prophesied. He needs to take this, to get the book, essentially, the Necromonkey. Oh, I can't even pronounce it. Necronomicon Ex Mortis. And so, but in order to do so, he's got to go through like this haunted forest.
Yeah.
And he comes to the windmill, which is a big nod to the old Universal kind of horror stuff.
Yeah.
Inside, he crashes into a mirror, and then this is where I was saying is a good segue, because he then has these small reflections of himself that then start to attack him, and it's almost like the Gulliver's Travels stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Where he's then kind of pinned down at one point, and
dive into his mouth, and
and he has to kind of pour shit down his mouth, doesn't he, like boiling stuff to get it out. And look, there's a lot of kind of and that kind of really, again, it moves more into fantasy element then, doesn't it? Which I guess that is essentially what is going on with Army of Darkness. You've got the knights, you've got Lord Arthur, as you said, a play on Arthur and his court. But we're very much living in more of that fantasy world rather than what is known as the real world part of it. But what's again, the comedy element is great. The section 2, because when he gets to the location of the Necronomicon, he's supposed to just say these. Oh no, he's got 3 books at first, doesn't he? So he's got to try and pick one, and of course he keeps picking the wrong one until he gets it.
Yeah.
But he's supposed to recite the 3 words "Clartu Barada Nicto."
Yeah.
And earlier on, he dismisses. I got it. Yeah. And of course, that's going to come.
Necktie.
A necktie. I love that. And of course, by screwing up the words at the end, he unwittingly raises the Army of Darkness, which will then attack them.
Those words are obviously a throwback to Day the Earth Stood Still, which are the introduction words for the aliens in the Day the Earth Stood Still.
That's correct, and I've forgotten that. Thanks. And that's I love that. I'm not talking about the Keanu Reeves remake.
No, I think there's a mention of it there as well, but it's the first one.
The original one's such a cool movie.
Yeah.
So look, it's so that kind of was that middle section, and then like the last act essentially is the Army of Darkness's attack on the castle.
He splits off into 2 because one of the little ashes goes into him, and suddenly he has this other being growing out of him.
Evil Ash.
Yeah. So Evil Ash then comes back.
Yeah.
I love when he buries him. You got something on your face.
Yeah, I love it. It's that whole section is so funny.
Yeah.
And the comedy timing of it is it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So like as I said, like so the end bit is like that's right, we forgot that there is a bit of a love interest thing going on with the Sheila character that happens, and then she's captured by one of the flying Deadites.
That's right.
And then she transforms into one as a result. And then we've got like the lead kind of. Does he have a name? The lead Deadite character, the kind of.
I don't think he does.
Head of the army.
It's probably like Shemp or one of the Stooges names or something.
Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah. They called it Shemps and in the I think the lady that was locked in the cellar, she was called Lead Shemp or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, you're right. But yeah, so look, it's so anyway. There is a bit of a central kind of character, as it were, with the Deadites anyway, and who basically leads the Army of Darkness, and he's the one that kind of gets all kind of hot and heavy with Sheila, and in doing so transforms her into a Deadite. So the thing that strikes me about Ash's character is that the continuing theme with him is he's not your typical hero. He's very kind of self-interested.
He's the full-blooded, obnoxious American that I think by around that stage in society, the world had realized that was America, basically.
Yes.
Surviving the 80s, which was full-blown obnoxious American, the decade of the obnoxious American.
Yep.
Suddenly we're thrust upon with Ash again, and as a reflection of that society, basically. Yeah. Anyway, personally, that's what I think. But he's supposed to capture the whole of the 80s. He never escaped the 80s. He never.
No.
And so they've pretty much I don't know whether they've made him more of a jerk, or the fact that he has a juxtaposition of the very British and polite knights and royal.
It's true.
So I think it gets accentuated more. It's almost like thrown back to the Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court.
Yeah.
He becomes a caricature. Whereas if he was in with a bunch of Americans, he'd probably seem quite normal.
Yeah. Good point. I mean, it's interesting. I don't want to dwell too much on the series, but it does continue that theme of him being this obnoxious 80s kind of person. His traits still haven't kind of changed either, even 30 years down the track.
What was that one? My Name is Bruce. Is that the one?
Yeah, My Name is Bruce. Yeah,
awful. It sounded like such a good idea, and it pretty much turned into the TV series, the Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Yes.
But and even in that, he was a complete jerk in that.
Yeah.
I think it just played with the fact that it's the complete antithesis of who Bruce Campbell actually is, because he's a larger than life character, but he's so bloody nice, and that he's got the complete and utter opposite of everything that he sort of plays with Ash.
He must have so much fun playing Ash.
Oh yeah,
because of that, because Ash is the complete opposite to Bruce. That he can have so much fun with him to kind of really, really just let go and let loose with him. And
he's playing with his id, isn't he? He's like,
yeah, very much so.
Id the whole time, and just expels a lot of sort of psychological demons by playing the worst kind of him.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. And that's why, and having a director like Sam Raimi kind of going, right, I'm going to take the worst example of you, and I'm going to put him in the worst possible position.
I guess that's the advantage of the fact that they know each other so well. Trust that Bruce has, that he can quite easily take the piss out of himself.
Yeah.
And Sam Raimi can quite easily take the piss out of him.
Yeah.
And they both know that they're going to come out with a hit movie, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but I think it's a great documentary about called Medieval Times, where they're all it's a retrospective documentary, and they're all talking about all the actors and stuff are talking about the times making the film, and like none of them forgot how great an experience it was.
Yes,
All just just completely, because none of them have really done anything spectacular since. But it just remains one of the high points of their lives for making this silly little film, and they all just had so much fun on it. It just they had an absolute ball. It was really only, they kept saying it, there was only Anne Beth Davids, who was at the beginning of quite an illustrious career.
Yes.
And she just didn't quite get it.
Yes.
Went along with it anyway, you know, and you see that with some actors, they end up in these roles that you just, within a franchise, and they go, I'm just going to make the best out of this situation.
Yep.
And it becomes this massive cult hit, and they're like, holy fuck. Yeah.
I was going to touch on that too, because I know you mentioned that last time round with Anne Beth Davids, his character. I mean, it was the first feature film that she was in, I think.
Yeah.
And then literally a year after, she was in Schindler's List, which was what propelled her forward, you know. But like you say that she wasn't. I mean, like, she must have had a degree of awareness of what was entailed within within the Evil Dead franchise, surely, or do you think it was, you know, coming in a little bit cold and looking at face value?
I don't know. It's like, it's such a boys' own film series.
Yeah.
That I think it has a few specific cult fans, but she doesn't strike me. Every time I've seen an interview with Anne Beth Davids, she hasn't struck me as a type of person that gets into the cult phenomenon too much.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there probably would have been that. She's obviously a serious actor in Hollywood to try and make a name for herself and try to get some work. And the first job she gets out there is this cult, you know, horror comedy movie that she probably has no idea about.
Yes.
And just goes along with it and does the best job that she can possibly do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of actors who do that. They just they shine in such bad. You know, I'm not saying this movie is a bad movie, because it's certainly not a bad movie, but there are certain bad movies that you see these actors in and you go, holy fuck, they're amazing.
Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio in Growing Pains.
Oh, yes.
Like an absolute sore thumb. I remember watching him on TV when it first aired, and I went, this kid's fucking amazing. What the hell is he doing on this TV show?
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that he just was in this. He was a bloody good child actor.
Yeah. Yes.
Getting a role, you know, wherever he could. And that's the way that Hollywood works, is that you just go, you pay your dues, and this was just her dues, or what she thought was her dues, but ended up in a cult phenomenon hit.
That's right. So just to kind of, like, I guess, try and tie up the plot line that we're kind of faced with Army of Darkness. Obviously, you know, the evil is vanquished in the end. Yeah, it's a big kind of fight and stuff, you know, that kind of pursues, and then it kind of ends up with a one-on-one kind of fight between Ash and the lead Deadite kind of character. But Ash kind of successfully kind of leads the medieval soldiers to kind of defeat the Deadites and save Sheila and bring back peace to the kingdom, but not without, like, Arthur gets kind of he gets mortally wounded, doesn't he, in this as well, like, from memory. I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah.
Does he survive it? I know he gets kind of really badly kind of stabbed at one point.
No, I think he's all right.
Yeah. Okay. But then the wise men kind of are able to return Ash back to the present day by giving him this potion. And, you know, he recites the words, and he's then back at present day, working in S-Mart, and he's doing his usual kind of talk to some kind of
shop S-Mart,
talking to some kind of young kind of
ingenue.
Yes, about surviving, you know, and his whole kind of tale and blah blah blah. And then, but because he hadn't recited the last words properly,
that's right. Got the evil back with
The
him.
evil's come back with him again. So like that's when he uses the a rifle from the sports goods and just kind of shoots the evil deadite kind of female and killing her essentially. And that's where we end. Very kind of snap cut kind of ending. So where did you what did you think? Or let's first question about like Army of Darkness. Then what did you think of the movie once you kind of sat through it all? And I didn't actually ask you where you were when you first watched this.
Oh, I saw it at the cinema.
You saw it at the cinema. Yeah.
What I did is I watched it and then I walked back out and I bought another ticket and went back in.
Nice.
Literally, that's what I did. I just absolutely fucking loved it. I just couldn't get enough of it. I think I saw it about 3 more times at the cinema.
Yes.
And I just absolutely flipped through it. I think I saw that movie. I had it as soon as it came out on VHS. I was working in a video store.
Yeah.
Pretty much had it on repeat, basically.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I think it was about the time where it must have been the most rented video that I watched this film.
Yeah.
I couldn't get enough of it. It was always like, yeah, I got to get this one out again.
And then the cut came out, so it was like, you got to see the
that's right,
the future as well. So
yes,
but yeah, I mean, I appreciate both versions. I do like the S-Mart version. It fits into, I think now retrospectively, now the TV series is out, it kind of fits into that universe.
Yes, it does.
A lot more than if it was to flash forward to the future. And I think around the time that the director's cut came out, I think a whole bunch of these movies like Salute of the Jugger and all these like futuristic apocalyptic type movies had been out, and they were just so bloody boring. I was just a bit fucking over them, really. So, and I thought if they were going to spin off and do another film, it would have to be a bit like the Salute of the Jugger and all these sort of post-apocalyptic films.
Yes,
I'm not sure whether I'm invested into that kind of where it's going there, because Mad Max just did it better.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Like, you can't, like, since Mad Max, or particularly to Road Warrior,
man, that film just so many fucking times. It was just
yeah.
Every bloody post-apocalyptic film just ended up in the desert with a whole bunch of disparate people looking exactly like the spin-off cast of Mad Max 2.
Absolutely. It's like they can't. I don't know, but they're trapped in that. Oh, it had such an impact, doesn't it? That's the thing. Yeah, was that 1982? Wasn't it? Is that right for that one? I think it was. But yeah, ever since then, it's always been like, you're right. This post-apocalyptic world is always kind of desert terrain and. Yeah, exactly. But you see the girl with all the gifts, and it's all jungly, sort of takes back over. Yeah, that's good. Seeing things being pushed into new territory. Yeah. So look, so when we then look at the trilogy, as you know, the arc of the trilogy, how do you feel like this one sits in that kind of place? Does it feel like this was a good transgression?
I don't think there's like a in regards to most trilogies, there tends to be a through line and a journey of the character. I don't think that the character goes on any specific journey. I think he just experiences a bunch of shit and then where he started with, but with less. Like, he loses a hand and he loses his girlfriend. So
yeah.
He's got a little bit of an extra knowledge about how to kill deadites and a bit more world weary.
Yes.
But that's pretty much it. I don't think he really learns anything exactly. So, and he certainly doesn't end up in a better place for it.
No, that's right. I mean, it's, now that we're living in, at the time we record, obviously, Ash would come back into the series, and so we are seeing his character move on in different ways and showing different sides of him. But I think we're going to say at the time of this record, if anyone's kind of tuning in later than the time we do record this, is that we are kind of halfway through, or nearly halfway through, season 3 of Ash vs Evil Dead. So we are going to have a little chat about the series, but we are going to wait until the end of the 3rd season to see where that ends up, and maybe have a little chat around the journey or the character arc, story arc that Ash goes in for that. But we'll save that for another day. But it kind of it did feel kind of cool that just to kind of end on that note, is that it did feel kind of cool that it had Ash was born again in the series, and we get to kind of see where his character has gone and open up his personality a lot more and his world a lot more. Which is what the series has kind of done. I like the fact that you did mention My Name is Bruce. So those people that aren't aware of it, I want to say don't watch it. But avid fans, maybe go check it out. But the premise of it was actually really kind of cool in the sense that it's basically like people mistake Bruce Campbell to be his character Ash when paranormal events start occurring. And so as I said, the premise of it sounded really quite cool. When we look at the trilogy, I think I said this to you in the last record of The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 is just, yes, they are standalone films, and I do agree with you with that, but there probably is the only franchise where you can kind of really look at them and A, they still hold up, B, is actually a really strong franchise, whereas a lot of the other franchises kind of ebbed away and there was hits and misses and stuff. All three of these films are really, really strong films.
But I think that's because they tried to make them, well, they were successful and they made them into each individual films.
Yeah.
And that's what we talked about before, was like they each stand in their own right. And you really need to have seen any of the other two to completely get into that one. I know people who've seen Army of Darkness but haven't seen the other two.
Yes, yeah.
And or seen the Evil Dead 2 but haven't seen the other two. So they just seem to be successes in their own right, but into that particular universe.
Cool. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and anyone that hasn't seen any of them, do check them out, because that was the thing I remember. I think we said in the last record, last podcast, is that for me, Evil Dead 2 was the one that really kind of stood out, that I remembered when if I was to recall stuff a bit more vividly. But when I watched the first one again, I was really blown away by it again. I was almost like being reawoken with it, and I forgot how good that film was because the second one was so embedded in my brain. But yeah, definitely go. Anyone listening to this, go check it out. It's even newbies, go check these out, because they're good fun films. I think we'll tie up there on our kind of Evil Dead discussions. But for those that are listening to this, stick around, because we're gonna release quite swiftly after this one. We're going to release a bit of a mini kind of discussion on where the franchise went next in the remake, which was directed by Fede Alvarez. But until then, I'm your host, Paul Farrell, joined by Miles Davies.
Yeah.
And we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.